Hello and welcome to Real Menopause Talk. My guest today is Carol King, known as the Menopause Auntie. Something I encourage all my clients to do is to bring joy into their lives. So when I heard Carol's own words, actively seek joy, I knew I had to share her wisdom. Like so many of us, Carol's menopause experience began with ignorance through no fault of her own, confusion, disbelief, and many challenges. Overcoming these challenges has been through dogged determination, intensive research, and fortunately, a large dose of humour, which she brings to millions of women worldwide through social media. Carol is knowledgeable, honest, and great company. So here she is. Hello. It's so good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast. I really appreciate that.
It is such a pleasure, particularly because I'm really up for a good laugh. In England, it is freezing, and you being based in Barbados and having such a wonderful sense of humour, I'm really happy to see you.
Well,
would you like to start by diving straight in and just tell people a little bit about yourself for those who don't know you, so they get a bit of an idea of who you are?
Super. Yeah, so my name is Carol King. I was born and raised in the UK. My parents are from Barbados. They travelled to the UK in the 50s, like many others, were part of what we called the Windrush generation. And they wanted to make a better life for themselves and for their family. So my sister and I were raised there. But when I reached the age of 29, my parents were ready to retire and they wanted to return to Barbados. And I said, me too. So I didn't have a family. My sister had a family, or else she would have come as well. But I went along with them, and I've been living in Barbados for 26 years now. Best thing I ever did. It was a great move. By profession, I'm a chef. I spent 30 years working in hotels and restaurants. I absolutely loved that industry. It was so much fun. I really, really enjoyed it. But then I got to the point where I realized that that's an industry for younger people, really, because that work doesn't get any easier. It remains very, very difficult. And I was getting older, and I knew I wanted to spend the second half of my life doing something a lot easier than that. Mm-hmm. So I was looking for things to do online, and I spent quite a lot of time working online doing social media marketing for small businesses here in Barbados. I used to help them with their social media, which I really enjoyed until perimenopause hit. And then the whole of life changed, as I'm sure you can imagine.
It does for many of us, yes. Oh, now I just want to come to Barbados even more, because if you're a chef and the food, I spent 6 months in the Caribbean in my early 20s and just loved it. I know it's different from island to island, but in Martinique, and it was glorious. Nice. Such beautiful weather, beautiful people, beautiful food. And now you're a chef as well. Oh my gosh. Amazing. So with no plans to return to grisly old cold England?
No, I just sit here and let everybody come here. So
sounds good.
And they prefer that. So we all win.
So how did you realize you were in perimenopause? What were your first indications?
You know, I had a realization. I mean, I'm still learning. Things still come to the light, even though I've been in this space for a while. I recently found out about 3 weeks ago that I used to say that I was in perimenopause for 10 years. That's what I used to say all of the time, because I was counting from when my symptoms got really bad, which was 2013.
Right.
So, but I recently found out that I've actually was in perimenopause for 17 years.
Good heavens.
It started when I was 38. But because the symptoms were sporadic, my doctor didn't put everything together to be able to say, my doctor didn't have that knowledge, to be fair. didn't put it all together until things started to get really bad in 2013. But I was actually having symptoms like recurring urinary tract infections, tinnitus, hair issues with my hair drying and falling out. I was all having all of those from when I was around 38. But I was treated, with each individual symptom because it wasn't all together. So, like so many women, we tried to treat what looks like the problem at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But in 2013, then it all sort of came crashing down, and I started to have so many symptoms that it all sort of piled on at the same time. But I spent from 2013 to 2017 not knowing I was in perimenopause, because even though things were that bad, my doctors didn't have that knowledge. So again, he was treating me for every little thing that I was running backwards and forwards to his office with, which was very regular. I mean, I was in his office at least 2 or 3 times a month.
Wow.
With something different. And I think it literally got to the point where he was actually tired of seeing me. I think he really began to think that I was a hypochondriac, and things weren't as bad as I was making it seem. One day I was pouring my heart out in his office and he went to sleep.
You're kidding. That's a first.
He
I've
went to
heard a
sleep.
lot, but he actually went to sleep.
I
That's
didn't realize,
outrageous.
because it was a really bad day. I was having a horrendous time. I was crying. I was ranting. It wasn't a pretty look at all. But I remember when I sort of caught myself, I looked up and he was on his hand, leaning on his hand, and his elbow slipped off the table. And he was all sort of, oh, where am I? What am I doing? What's happening? And that's when I realized he was actually sleeping.
That's outrageous. I mean, I know so many women have situations where their symptoms aren't taken seriously, particularly when they're not visible. If you're not bleeding from your arm profusely, then it's very difficult for people to empathize or even sympathize that actually there could be something genuinely going on. And certainly 2013, GPs over here, I don't know if they were even educated at all on menopause. Certainly weren't talking about it then, or not in the way that they are now. So how did you progress from there?
Well, again, for that 6 years, it was just forward and backwards, lots of specialists, lots of tests, lots of money spent. And every time I had a test, it was, we can't find anything wrong. That was the constant thing, especially when the heart palpitations started. They actually took that very seriously. And I had dozens and dozens of tests, everything you could think of, and everything was always normal.
Mm-hmm.
And the fainting, really, they took that seriously as well, because I kept fainting. Never fainted in my life, but I would walk, and as soon as I sort of got out of breath, if I was doing anything assertive, I would faint. That went on for 5 months. I didn't work for 5 months when that was happening. And it just stopped the way it started. It started one day and one day it stopped 5 months later. And that's how my symptoms went on. But then that particular day when my doctor actually fell asleep in the office, he did say to me, well, you are approaching the age for menopause. I was around 47 then, I think, somewhere around there. And I said, oh. And that's all he said. But it was enough for me. I now had what could possibly be a reason for all that I'd experienced. So then I did what I do best. I'm very good at research, and I went away and I started to dig and dig and dig and dig, which was that was 2017. And that's where my journey really started. And I soon began to understand that this really could be the cause for all that I'd experienced.
Sadly, that is all too familiar. But when it gets to something that serious that you can't work for a period of time, and something as concerning, certainly personally, I've found the heart palpitations, fainting and vertigo deeply, deeply challenging, more than anything else for me. I know we all have our different ones, but it's really genuinely debilitating, and quite frightening, particularly if you don't know what's going on. You've got a huge international community around you. So you've got the Americans, you've got the Brits, you've got the Bayesians, you have so many people. How have you seen any differences in attitudes over the period of time when you were doing your research and now?
Well, the attitudes, I think, are definitely improving. I mean, when I first started to research in 2017, I kept seeing basically the same articles over and over again regurgitated throughout the internet. Everybody had this sort of little bit of information and everybody was sharing that little bit of information. But as time went on and I got to around 2020, around 2020, I found that I was starting to see a little bit more and a little bit more. But what happened is I was writing a blog from 2018 to 2020 just for my own therapy. I didn't share it with anybody. I used to just write because that's something that I've always enjoyed doing. And one day during the lockdown, our first lockdown, I said, you know what, I'll just share one of my blog posts to my own Facebook. And I literally had the first time ever seeing that many comments on my own personal Facebook. There was hundreds of women that I've known for years saying, oh, I had that. I had that. I had that. Me too. Me too. Me too. And I was completely astounded. I said, how have I known you for 20 years and didn't know that? How have I known you my whole life and didn't know that? But what I realized was then is that, you know, women want to have the conversation, but they often don't want to be the first to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that still the case now. The conversation is being had, but we're literally just scratching the surface. We're not even close to where we need to be because every day I see comments saying, I had no idea. So if that's the case, then we're still not where we need to be. But I mean, I love to see the conversations. I love that the research is going on, legislation even, which is great. But we have a very, very long way to go.
Yep, I agree. And keep thinking that actually we've made a huge amount of progress and then something will happen to derail the
Exactly.
whole thing.
Exactly.
But we keep on. We keep on.
Yes, absolutely.
And your TikTok in particular is doing such a great service. And I love the approach of it being humorous because we also do need some humor when it gets particularly challenging. So how do you inject that? Is that just part of who you are and it comes naturally? How do you manage to flip the really challenging parts into something that we can actually laugh at?
Actually, that is who I am. We often hear the term laughter is medicine, and it literally is for me, and it has been my whole life. I've always used humor as a way to pick myself up when things have gotten really bad. I've used that as a tool throughout my whole life because I feel like if I can just find something to laugh at, then maybe I can just distract myself from that for a moment enough to move forward, enough to get up again and try again, you know, with fails in life, in relationships, in work, and just as a way to propel me on so I don't give up completely. I've always used humor like that. So when I started to post videos about menopause, I used to sit very sternly in my chair and I would sit upright and I would deliver the information. But it didn't feel like me. It didn't feel like me at all. And we know that TikTok is very authentic, it's very real, it's very open. But I was afraid that it would be misconstrued. I didn't want it to seem as though I was making fun. I thought, I know, I would hate anybody to think that I was laughing at women in menopause because, you know, we see comedy that's meant to be funny, but it's not. And I did not want to be a part of that. So I sort of held that back for a while until one day there was a trend going around on TikTok. It was completely irrelevant to menopause, but I knew that I could make it about menopause. And I thought, I'm just going to do that and see what happens because it's really funny. And I did that. And of course, it was my first viral video.
Amazing.
So I said, okay, so y'all don't mind laughing then. Good. And that's when I just let it all, unleashed it all and hope for the best. But I found that, yeah, women love to be able to know that they can have a little bit of a giggle when they can go to my page. They can get a little bit of a rest from it, but still understand, but still learn something at the same time, which is what I endeavor to do, a bit of edutainment, if you like.
What was your first TikTok that went viral then?
It was, I saw a gentleman, he was a midlife guy, and he was talking about the issues that we can get with our stomach with using dairy as we get older. And he did a sort of literally a 7-second skit, where he did it to a song. What was the song? Can't Touch This. MC Hammer.
Mm-hmm.
And he was drinking a milk. He was drinking a glass of milk, and then literally seconds later, he was in the bathroom struggling with his stomach. And I said, you know what? That's like hot flashes. We're going along and everything's good, and then literally 5 minutes later, we're covered in sweat. And I did that. I did a quick skit of me getting ready for in the morning. I put on my makeup. I'm looking great, and then 5 minutes later, I was a whole wreck. And that video got about 4 million views.
Oh my goodness.
So I couldn't, and over 5,000 comments. And I literally sat and read every single one of them because I wanted to be sure that I wasn't offending anybody. And there wasn't a single negative comment amongst them. So I said, okay,
What were
we can
people
have a laugh
saying?
over here. That's me. I mean, that's what I get on the majority of my content. The majority of the type of comments that I get is, that's me. I do that. When women see me, when they see my content, they don't even see me a lot of the time. They see themselves, and that's great. They absolutely see themselves, and then they see me later. They realize that's a person that's actually experiencing that. But they're so engrossed with the fact that they're seeing themselves for the first time, and somebody understands that that's what it looks like. And I always want to make it look as real and as vivid as it is. I don't want to sugarcoat it and make it look like it's a soft thing. It can be really, really ugly, as we know. So I want it to look as drastic as possible. I'm sorry, I screamed back. I'm not
Now
sure
I'm
if you're
jealous
hearing
again.
that.
I've forgotten what I was going to say, but that was also a very regular feature. Good old perimenopause. One of your videos that really resonated with me was the walking into things. I mean, literally, and being English, although I know my Canadian counterparts also do this, walk into a wall and apologize to the wall. But walking into things, the clumsiness is quite extraordinary. I mean, that's one of the lesser problems by a long way. But
No, but I mean, that was a huge one for me. And I actually talk about that a lot because I really don't see people mention it very often. And I remember I went through a phase when I first learned that that was actually a menopause symptom. I knew that a couple of years before I had gone through a phase. I was bouncing off all the walls in my house. And I thought, why can I not walk around this corner anymore? Why do I bump into this corner every time I get there? It was a particular corner from my bedroom to my living room. And I used to hit that thing almost every day. And I had bruises on my hand where I kept hitting the doorknobs
no.
in the house. And I couldn't understand why I was bumping into things. But then when it got really scary when I started to have the same issue with driving. I kept bumping the curve when I was driving. And I stopped driving at night for a while because of that, because I found it wasn't so bad in the day. Well, it didn't happen in the day, but when I used to drive at night, I kept bumping the curb, and I stopped driving at night for a little while because it scared me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a huge light bulb moment, because I've never been a clumsy person, and I trip up every other minute now. And that wasn't me before. And like, how do you trip up on a flat floor? What is that?
I did exactly that yesterday walking down the street because I had to look behind me. I tripped up so badly just to see what I'd fallen over. There was nothing.
Nothing there.
Nothing at all. It was just me. Proud moment. Fortunately, there wasn't anyone else on the street, but you kind of style it out anyway.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So Sleeping Doctor kind of came through with his suggestion. And then you researched. What did you find then worked for you? What are you doing that helps you?
Well, when I discovered hormone replacement therapy, and I knew I wanted to do that, but there wasn't a menopause specialist that I was aware of in the island. So what I did is I put it out to everybody that I knew, I'm looking for a menopause specialist. Does anybody know one? But in the meantime, I took on the advice of the lifestyle changes that I was reading about. So I made a lot of changes, particularly to my diet. My diet was quite horrible, I have to admit. And I had extreme gut issues because of it. The bloating and the nausea was quite horrible. I scared my family for a while because there was a time when I was only eating salad, literally,
Wow.
because it was the only thing I could stomach.
Okay.
I'd get up and have lettuce and cucumber and tomato for breakfast. I'd have it for lunch and I'd have it for dinner, because anything else just sent me into such stomach pain that I couldn't take it. I just couldn't take the thought of going through the pain. So I was literally eating salad for about 4 months,
4 months. But you
which
must have
wasn't
felt rubbish on that as well.
absolutely, because there's nothing in that you can survive on.
Mm-hmm.
It was a terrible time. I said my family were quite concerned. But like, as I learnt, I knew I had to do something about my gut, and I found that probiotics in foods as well, alkaline foods, really helped me as well. So I started to change my diet, and bit by bit, my stomach got a lot better. So I changed my diet. I created a sleep routine, because that was my other horrible side. I would get into bed at random times at night and lie there with my phone and all of that. And that wasn't helping me sleep. So I created a sleep routine for myself, which I use to this day, which has been great. And I rest intentionally as well, because I don't always sleep. It's not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to rest during the day. I do care for an elderly parent. So when he rests, I rest. Treat it like we do when you have small children. When they sleep, you sleep. So that's what I do to make sure that I rest. I make it a part of my routine to get rest, and to turn off from the cell phones and the tablets and all of that, and the television and the news, to put that aside as well, and to intentionally look for joy. Because I think that as women, that's something we don't do. We do it when we're younger.
Mm-hmm.
And as we get older, we start being responsible for so many people. We do less of that. So I go out and look for things that I know are joyous. May I go to the beach, or I do my crocheting, or I watch chick flicks, movies that I know are going to make me laugh. I intentionally do those things just because I enjoy them. We have to, I feel that's so important, that we don't go out and look for things that we enjoy
Mm-hmm.
and intentionally do them. We may stumble across them from time to time, but we don't make it a routine. But I put joy into my life routine. I must go and have some fun. I haven't done that this week. And that helps me greatly as well.
That is music to my ears, because I do think that is one of the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle that is overlooked so frequently. We talk very often about stress management, which obviously is the foundation to feeling well. But with that, really, it is the joy and the humour that releases all the endorphins and makes us feel good and minimizes the stress. So finding joy, particularly when you're either caring for young children or elderly parents or both, there's a lot of grind in midlife and work and the hustle and the hassle of everything. So finding joy and keeping that, the fact that you even schedule it is genius. It's such a beautiful thing to do to maintain being alive.
Yes. I remember going through a phase of my life where I felt that I was totally invisible. And I felt that way because I was acting that way. I I sort of shrank away from everything, from everybody's sight. I would walk around as though I was invisible, and people literally treated me as though I wasn't there, because I was just meekly um, going through the grind of the routine, and not doing anything that was even remotely lifelike. I was literally a robot just plodding through. And I said to myself, I remember one day, I don't know if that's a good catalyst or not, but I remember one day I was walking down the street, and I remember seeing this really attractive man walking towards me. And for the first time in must be years, I sort of went, oh. You sort of perk yourself up a little bit, because you've seen somebody that's good looking. And this man looked straight through me. He looked as though there was nobody on the street but him. And I remember the expression, and I it's not about him not finding me attractive, it's that he literally acted as though I wasn't there. And I knew that that was me, because that's how I'd been behaving.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that pretty much everyone around me, when I would be out and about, would act as though I wasn't there. I would go up to a counter to buy something, and the server would look to the person behind me, and I knew that was me. I said, "You see that? That's you. You're acting as though you don't matter, and you're projecting that you don't matter, and people are treating you like you don't matter." And I really didn't want to go through my life like that. And that wasn't me. Also, I knew that wasn't who I was. So I knew I had to make changes to even just my day to day, how I thought about myself, how I dressed, make some effort to look like I'm a human, because that was the other thing I'd stopped doing. I'd just throw clothes at my body randomly and go out, made no effort whatsoever. And I knew that I had to change all that, because that wasn't how I'm going to spend the next 50 years of my life. I plan to live to 100, because when you live to 100 in Barbados, you get a visit from the Prime Minister or the Governor General. So
Fantastic.
I'm planning to live to 100, so I can't continue like that. So I had to make some changes.
Oh, it's so familiar. It really is. And feeling, for want of a better word, because it's not really a word, blur and just very
That was
nothing.
it.
But then the fact that you took responsibility for it and made the changes yourself, when it comes from you, then it really takes on a life of its own. Then that's fantastic. And from there, what happened next? Because you mentioned earlier, you knew what you wanted your second part of life to be. And that's something I wholeheartedly embrace, because it's part two. It's what happens next.
Yes.
It is a long time. People used to dismiss us, or still dismiss us, when we hit midlife, maybe, even earlier, and certainly menopause. This is the beginning as far as I'm concerned. So how did you restart yourself?
Well, I think social media really helped me to do that. Once I realized that this conversation wasn't happening, and well, actually, I remember a day I was in the supermarket, and I just started to post content, and I sort of realized that there was a lady standing by me. She was very close, and I sort of looked at her, and she said, "Are you the lady that talks about dry vaginas?"
That's so cool.
I thought so. And I was like, yes, that's me. And we had a whole conversation about vaginal dryness in the supermarket, and it was wonderful. I just thought it was excellent. And I said, you know what? This is something that you can do. You're quite. I come from a background of teaching as well, because as well as being a chef, I was a chef instructor at a college.
Amazing.
And I did that for 10 years. So I'm accustomed to speaking in front of people. So I thought, well, I can do this. I can sit down and deliver this sort of information. And then I decided that that is really what I wanted to do. And I said, okay, let's make a plan to really make social media your life. That's what you're going to do. That's going to be your career now. And I don't think I could have made a better choice for myself, to be honest. I really love the process of creating content, and that I get to share with so many women as well. It's great.
And you created the Menopause Lounge as well. Do you want to tell everyone about that?
Yes, I did. And unfortunately, I had to close it as well, because I had we had a passing of a family member, and
I'm
it was
sorry.
becoming increasingly difficult to someone that was extremely close to my father. So, and he took it very hard, and I felt like I couldn't do both. So we actually closed the Menopause Lounge, but the idea was to have a private place for women to come and speak to one another out of social media, so that you don't get all the trolling that can happen. And that was the premise. And hopefully I'll be able to bring it back one of these days.
But in the meantime, Are You There, God? It's Me in Menopause. And
Yes,
for, I would say, the vast majority of us, if not all of us, we certainly remember, although I wasn't allowed it in the house, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I had to sneak it in under a jumper and a bag, and then borrow a friend's, and then sneak it out again. Tell us all about Are You There, God? It's Me in Menopause.
Oh, this is my absolute pride and joy, because, as I said, I've wanted to be an author from the time I was around 12 or 13. It's something I've always loved, the thought of walking into a bookshop, because I used to spend way too many hours as a teenager in the bookstops, because I love to read. And I love the idea of walking into a bookstore and seeing a book of mine on the shelf. And that dream has always lurked in the back of my mind. And when I was approached by an editor about the book, I said, yes, 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 yes. And of course, not having any clue about what the process of writing a book is really like. And, I had no clue, but I knew I was going to do it no matter what. And when the process began, I found it was very intense. I won't say not, because obviously being a part of being published by a large company, they have very intense timelines, and you definitely have to stick to those timelines. So it was very intense at times. But thankfully, my sister came over from England to help take care of my father so I could focus on the writing, which was really great. Thank you, Debbie. Um, enabled me to do that. And it was fantastic. I really enjoyed the process of writing it. It was a great experience, which I'd like to do again, somebody. And the thing I love about this book is that it is, without sounding vain, to me, it's the book that some of us really need, because we can read menopause books, and I've read some fantastic ones. But for me, now that I struggle with focus and struggle with concentrating on a book for a long period of time, we needed a book in a format that enabled us to go and come from it. So you can literally get up one day and you'll think, I'm struggling with hair loss. And you can go to that book and you can pick up the section about hair loss and read that. And you'll have tips and you'll have ideas. You'll understand why it's happening. You can understand what you're doing about it. And then you can put that book down and go away. And then come back another day and think, oh, I want to learn about hot flashes, and do that. You literally don't have to start at the beginning and read all the way through to the end to get the information that you're looking for. And I love that about it. It's very user friendly. And of course, my humor's involved in that. I got to share a lot more about my journey as well, because I haven't always done that. So I've shared a lot more about my own journey and my experiences with certain symptoms. And I think it is a book that we women will enjoy reading and enjoy learning from, because we don't always get to enjoy from our learning. Educational books aren't always enjoyable to read. They're not always fun to read when we're learning, where they tend to be two separate things. But in this book, you're getting solid science, solid information, because it is written with Dr. Ashley Alexis, and she was there to make sure that everything was exact and to add her knowledge to the medical side as well. So you're getting a really whole look with a splash of fun as well.
That sounds wonderful. It really does. I'm very excited to go and see it. We've just had a new bookshop open around the corner. So when it is there, which I know it will be, I will go in. Oh, do you know what? I will take a photograph of it and send it to you, just so that you know that it's all over the place.
I'd love that. That would make my day.
Oh, so what next for you? A big book launch and then?
Yes. I feel like I just need to continue my dream, one of the other things I really love to do is more public speaking. I'd really like to do that. I would like to sort of do a lot more of that, especially locally. I'd like to do more events where we can talk about menopause. I've done a few already. I'd like to do some more of that. And just to keep doing what I'm doing, to keep sharing the information until hopefully one day somebody says, I knew all about that. That would be good if we get to the point where we know. My nieces, I have two nieces, they're in their 20s and they're tired of me already when it comes to social media, but they know what they need to know. So when they get into their 30s and their 40s, it's not going to be a shock for them. Then they're going to know exactly where to go, exactly what to get, exactly how to live in order to manage their journey. And that's great for them. But we still need to help those of us who are swirling in this mess right now, not knowing what's happening. So I just want to do more of that and keep helping as much as I can.
It is a really fantastic thing to do. I love it as well. The community, I know there are a lot of great men out there, but the women are the best. The women I have had the fortune to meet over the last year in particular, they are the absolute best. So having the privilege to be around them and be able to share knowledge, it's a really wonderful thing.
Absolutely. And to have the constant conversations, because I do not get in and out of my local supermarket now without speaking to somebody about menopause. My sister calls me the celebrity because every time we leave home, we end up in a conversation with somebody around menopause, because I find women here are quite willing to talk about any topic in menopause once they've got the opportunity to, and they'll stop me anywhere and everywhere, and it's great. And I'll talk to everybody, because I just love the idea that we can have these conversations. We don't have to feel bad about it. We don't have to feel afraid or ashamed. There's nothing wrong with us. And we can just talk about it and sort ourselves out instead of waiting for somebody to give us a hand. We can help ourselves.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. So to round off, Carol, I mean, I could very happily sit here either with an ice cream or a cup of tea or whatever all day. But what would be your top 3 tips or the most valuable piece of information you would like to leave women with?
Ooh. Actively look for peace and balance. I felt like the thing that has been the most valuable thing for me to learn is the importance of peace and balance. When I was younger, I worked extremely long hours. I loved it, but it wasn't really that healthy. I didn't eat that well. I didn't sleep that well. I partied a lot, and you're sort of burning the candle at both ends and in the middle as well. And that wasn't a balanced way to live. When you hit menopause, you have no choice, because it turns you upside down. So you can't live the way you were living. I'm not saying everybody was living the way I did, but I understood that there has to be balance in life. You have to have your mental health needs to be in a good place. Your physical health needs to be in a good place. I now work out at a gym 3 days a week with a personal trainer. I never imagined that would be me, and that I would actually love that and miss it when I don't get to go. So I think a balance of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And with that balance brings a peace of mind that I never had when I was younger, which I never knew I needed. And I think that if you can do that, the second half of our lives can be a lot more joyous if we can find that balance between managing the things and the people that we do and managing ourselves, but taking care of ourselves as much as we take care of everybody else.
Carol, thank you so much for all your time and your wisdom and energy. I really, really appreciate it. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I love to have these conversations, and I love that you are providing others with that information as well, because we all play our part, and it's great that you have a podcast that you can share as much knowledge from a lot of different people, which is great.
Oh, well, thank you. Finally, for everybody listening, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Menopause 101, on TikTok at Auntie Carol's 50s, and right now you can find me on YouTube as of this week. You can find me on YouTube on Menopause 101 as well. I've just started a YouTube channel, so come and join me on there as well.
And your book is out on?
That is out on February the 18th.
Fantastic.
And it's at Barnes & Noble. Right now it's at the American site, so Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, Amazon. But if you're not outside of the States, obviously, it's on Amazon.
Carol, thank you again. It's been really lovely meeting you.
And you, it's been a great fun. Thank you so much. I do appreciate it.
As she said, you can find Carol on Instagram and TikTok, Menopause 101. And Are You There, God? It's Me and Menopause is released on the 18th of February 2025. I'd also like to share with you that I am about to release a limited number of places on my online program, so available worldwide, 12 weeks to conquer your menopause symptoms and rediscover your zest. If you're interested and want to find out more, DM me on Instagram at Real Menopause Talk, or drop me an email, Hattie, which is spelt Hatty, at realmenopausetalk.com. I look forward to speaking to you. Thank you for listening to this episode. I look forward to the next time.